Hi, everybody, and welcome to Fierce Fabulous Fridays, Breaking the Glass Ceiling. I am Deborah Korn. I am the executive director of Girls Who Print, which is now a nonprofit. We'll talk about that a little later. I am here with the vice president and program director of Girls Who Print, Kelly Mallozzi. And we have a very special guest today. And I say that because Pat is wanted by everybody in the print industry. And usually we can get her for our Girls Who Print conference, for our International Women's Day conference. But these Fierce Fabulous Fridays is a little hard to book her. So I know you moved something to join us today. So thank you, Pat McGrew, for that. And this is a perfect topic for Pat to join us in, breaking the glass ceiling, because she has broken the glass ceiling several times in the printing industry and related software industries. That's what we're going to be talking about today. So Kelly, while I'm setting up, you want to say hello to everybody?
I do want to welcome everyone. It's so good to see everybody here. We've got Emily Simon, who was our Rising Star Award winner a couple of years ago. We have everybody's favorite ally, Warren Werbit, in the house.
Warren.
Warren and Sandy
Thank you.
Hubbard. Everybody wants to take a ride to Sandyland. So we're very happy to have Sandy here. Sandy will, if I have to guess, be manning the chat, personing the chat. So feel free to introduce
Sitting in the
yourself
chat. That was
in the
great.
chat. And it looks like you are ready to roll.
So today we're going to be talking about, breaking the glass ceiling. And it was really interesting when I was doing research for our presentation today. The glass ceiling is an invisible barrier preventing women from reaching the top leadership positions. But I don't think it's so invisible. I don't know about the rest of you. I think it is very much in our faces, and it is not some mystery thing that's out there that we can't address, see, and navigate around. So what I wanted to talk about in the setup of this presentation is the fact that it is not invisible. We can see that over the past decade that women's representation has increased, but we still see a disproportionate amount of women who achieve roles as the amount of women who start progressing up the corporate ladder or the career ladder starts to diminish after entry level. So everybody comes in, but then they sort of stay in these buckets. And today, the research from McKinsey says that women make up 29% of C-suite positions compared to just 17% in 2015. But the progress is much slower in the earliest stages of the pipeline, which is from entry level to the first bump to the manager position, which we spoke about in our last session. It takes 5 years longer for women to go from entry level to their neck to a manager position than it does for men. And in general, if the course stays the way it is right now, it will take 22 years for white women to reach parity, which just means that there's a fair representation based upon the population, based upon the amount of people working in that industry, that there's a fairness to the balance of leadership roles. And as you can see, for women of color, it's more than double that. And these are from, and that stat was from Lean On, even though this was the chart from McKinsey. We reviewed this chart last week with Kelly, and this was a great representation of what's going on here. If you look all the way to the left of the slide, as Kelly pointed out last week, things are pretty even. If you take out women of color from this, things are relatively even. And as you start moving up the chain is where it becomes disproportionate. And why is that? What is what is the reason that it takes women 5 years longer to get to manager? And then from there, that starts stacking the deck against you for all the other, leadership the leadership path that you might be on. So this was really interesting, the broken rung. I'm not sure if everybody knows what this is. I actually had never heard it in this presented in this way. And I'm going to read what the definition of broken rung is so I don't mess it up. A broken rung in career development refers to a significant barrier often experienced by women where there is a disproportionate difficulty in transitioning from entry level positions to management roles, essentially creating a missing step on the corporate ladder that hinders career progression early on. This is typically attributed to systematic biases and inequalities in the workplace, preventing women from reaching higher level leadership positions. And if we look at the information from leanin.org, we see that this manifests in men holding 62% of manager level positions, while women hold 38%, even in the entry level stages of the career. And as I said before, that not being able to get up that step or taking longer or need extra help or having to build that rung yourself, create your own position, whatever it might be, is where this all slows down for women and stops us from getting even close to breaking a glass ceiling. And women of color are more likely to be hung back by the broken rung than anybody else. For every 100 entry-level men who are promoted to manager, just 68 women of Hispanic descent and 58 women, Black women, or 58% of 58 Black women are promoted. So what is the reason for this? An unconscious bias refers to the automatic, unintentional, very important that we recognize that word, unintentional associations or judgments we make about people based on stereotypes and preconceived notions. And this is really where workplace dynamics can be affected. It's affecting who you hire, the reasons why you think someone might do a great job or not do a great job, and even how you have to speak to people in the office. So again, unintentional, unconscious. Now there is conscious bias too, but that's not what we're talking about. What we are talking about and what we want to speak to with our allies is that we're not blaming anybody. We're just saying this is a thing. And if you think any of these things, that maybe, we want to help you think differently about it. And women obviously have a place to stand up for themselves and say things too, but unconscious bias. So what are some of the unconscious biases out there? Assuming that men are more competent in technical roles. I mean, you see, when I was growing up, girls, did art and math, and boys did the math and the science. Like it was just assumed that women would be in the liberal arts, or if they even, got past being a homemaker or anything like that, right? This is something that Kelly says all the time, that a woman's lucky. She's lucky that she has achieved these positions, but men are never lucky. It is also always about their skill. So if you see a man in a high ranking position, unconscious bias says they deserve it, where you see a woman in the same position and unconsciously some people out there say, I wonder how she got that job. Who is she sleeping with? I'm sorry, I've heard this in the printing industry about friends of mine. So it's out there. Motherhood is not something that is not thought about by hiring managers, especially if you're in the, I hate using this phrase, child rearing years, right? Do we give her the big account? She might have a baby. Where is her attention going to be then? So let's not move her into that position where there's a lot of travel, where there's, late nights, whatever the considerations are. And then, of course, the stereotype that women and women of color, especially, are less qualified just because of who they are. And I want to make a special note here because if you are in the United States, we are receiving a lot of messages that DEI is the cause of system failures, planes crashing, anything that you want to, wokeness, however you want to phrase it. But I want to be very clear that DEI means women and people of color, and that there are memos going around to remove women and people of color from government jobs because the perception is that they are unqualified, and the only reason they are there is through some diversity and inclusion initiative, not taking into account that any woman or any person of color in those roles more than likely had to achieve 3 times as much as anybody else to even be considered, because of the unconscious bias that is associated the minute that they walk into a room. Um, so how do we overcome these things? Well, self-education. Pat is here. She started the Print University. It is self-serve education. I don't know if anybody is on TikTok, but there was and is the most amazing movement I've ever seen. It is called Hillman TikTok University. And when what the uh, a professor teaching African American studies went on TikTok and just announced that the course was open. And within an hour, more than 404,000 people followed her account, thinking it was an open class for everybody online. And it wasn't. She was just telling her students. But it became, everybody wanted to take her class. So she was like, okay. And then what happened is all of these other educators came together and they created a free university online for people. So there is a way to do it, whether you pay or not, to keep your education going. And there is tons of resources. And I would definitely say there's TikTok University is out there and they have live courses. I was watching them. It's fantastic. Mentorship programs and the people around you can, you can talk to them. You can share your life experience without, you don't want to sit down and lecture a guy, but you can be like, this is how much I get done in a day and I could still do more. Like, is there anything, I'm here to take an assignment, like, put me in, coach. There's more I can be doing. Career coaching, Kelly Mallozzi. We have Kelly Mallozzi here. We have Kim Wooner, who hangs out with us. She is a career coach. She's fantastic. There are many professional networks out besides Girls Who Print out there for you to join. There is, of course, you could join Girls Who Print. We do have a membership platform and program now. Self-advocacy. If you don't stand up and speak up for yourself, who is going to do that for you if not you? And women need to practice doing that. And I will tell you that I am in the I need to practice what I preach category, because I'm not the best advocate of myself, although that might seem odd to a lot of you because I'm out there all the time. But when it comes to speaking about my accomplishments and things like that, it's something I'm not used to, like tooting my own horn, as they say. I become embarrassed about it, and I think other people should say nice things about me. I shouldn't have to say nice things about myself, which is a whole other problem that Pat can address in a different webinar. And then, of course, build alliances. I mean, Warren Warburt's in here right now. He's part of our alliance. And ask your allies for help. How did you do this? What is your advice for getting Joe to agree to something? What is the best way to navigate, my customers not, doesn't, there are some customers out there that don't want to be sold to by women. So there are things out there that we have to take ownership of, and we have to navigate. And the best way to do it is to go through it together, as Robert Frost said. So I'm going to turn off my slides and turn over to Pat McGrew to take it from here.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. We know you have a choice of how you spend your time. Thank you for flying with us. We know you have a choice in airlines as well as associations. We thank you for flying with us. This is really important. So I don't think you'll ever find any two people who actually agree on whether there's a glass ceiling or not. If there is a glass ceiling, how thick it is, who it impacts the most. I've hit my head on it a few times, but I've also cracked it open quite a bit. And the way I get there is because I ignore it. And I think that in some ways it's easy to be caught up in this idea that there are things preventing you from reaching the goals that you set for yourself. So my best advice to everyone I talk to when they're at early stages of their career is know what you're trying to do. Know what you want to do. Arm yourself with the tools to get there. If you are really in love with engineering, and whether it's mechanical engineering, chemical engineering, learn everything you can and take advantage of anyone who will talk to you about it. If your thing is business, figuring out strategies, paths forward, listen to as many podcasts as you can, read as many articles, go to McKinsey, go to Bain, go to all the things that everybody in executive leadership is reading, and read it while you're on your entry path so that you know the jargon, you understand the talk tracks, and you can hold your own in a conversation with people 20, 30 years your senior. Because when you can talk like them, you become one of them. And that will change your trajectory. Did for me. If you are in marketing, if you're on the creative side of things, these same rules apply. Figure out what the experienced people are doing, and you do it too. Use the same resources, learn the language, because one of the ways that a glass ceiling can keep you from getting ahead is if you don't know the language of the people on the other side of that glass. And it's the fastest way to get pigeonholed. I changed careers several times in my life. I started out with the intent to be a TV news journalist, and I did that for a while. And then I was a magazine editor for a while. And then I got into technical communication and discovered I really liked it, and ended up growing with a company that created variable data print, the first ones for Xerox and for IBM printing systems. And at no time did anyone ever look at me and say, oh, you're a girl, you can't do this. No one ever did. because I was learning the right language and the right talk tracks every step of the way. I could hold my own in a conversation. When I moved to the company that was doing that variable data groundbreaking work at the time, I was 7 months pregnant when they hired me. So don't believe that being a mother or wanting to be a mother or being in the middle of becoming a mother is a barrier to you going after the jobs you want. Don't ever not apply for a job because you've got kids or because you're pregnant or because you're having some other health difficulty, because fundamentally, if it's not an issue to you, it shouldn't be an issue to anybody who's looking to hire you. If you know the language and you know the skill set, you're going to be fine. And there are people who will hire you. It's a tricky time right now. There's no doubt about it. But when I was 7 months pregnant and starting the new job, no, legally, they're not allowed to ask you if you intend to come back after the pregnancy. And so I actually brought it up in the interview and said, hey, just so you know, I do intend to keep working. And in fact, I ended up having to go into the hospital early because I had a child who was really happy where he was and did not want to leave. And so I actually worked from the hospital for about 2 weeks before he came, and then worked from home for about 3 months at a time when I was working on a mainframe computer. And in order for me to do that, they had to bring me a dumb terminal and wire my house with DSL so I could be able to continue to work. But they felt that my value was high enough to do that. And it became the precedent that was set for everyone who came after me in that same company who found themselves in the same situation. It made us set policies that nobody even thought about until I was the one there going, well, hi, now what? My son went to his first trade show when he was 3 months old because I needed to be at that trade show and he needed to come too. So they made accommodations for it. Don't believe companies won't, they will. Small companies, medium-sized company, large companies. And if you happen to be working at a company that looks at you in the eye and says, your problem, not ours, begin that day looking for your next role, because that's not a company that's going to support you on your journey. They're not going to help you. I think, Deb, one of the things about all those stats, and Kelly, those stats that we look at from McKinsey and from a lot of the other folks who study these things, they're looking at this global market or a US market. They're looking at all sorts of business entities, service organizations, manufacturing companies, companies that do software development, companies building Caterpillar tractors or lawnmowers or beauty supplies or food, or I mean, there's, you know, look at the NAIC list. There's a lot of different kinds of businesses out there. And I think some businesses are a little touchier than others. Some of them are more of an old boys network than others. But my experience in the printing industry, and I've been in software development, hardware development, marketing, sales, customer service, owning companies, you know, helping customers thrive, doing customer success work. I've not found in the print industry that there's an unwillingness to promote women, but I have found that little bit of bias there that says, prove to me you know the words. But the funny thing is that when I talk to young men coming up, they feel that same pressure. They don't feel like they're being given a job just because they're the guy in the room. They have to prove their worth too. They have to prove that they know the jargon and they understand the business process and that they understand everything. So I think that sometimes we look at those numbers and we say, oh my God, you know, it's just so hard for a Black woman or a Hispanic woman or an Arabic woman to get a job. Yeah, if they don't know the language, if they're expecting to be given it. And I've worked with women who kind of expected that they should be given accommodations because, and I'm here to tell you, don't. Create yourself a baseline as in reference to the job you want, and make sure you know as much as everybody else. I think you'll get where you want to go. Don't let the statistics deter you from the job that you want, because they're a snapshot in time and they're a snapshot in culture. You can be anything you want to be. You can do any job you want to do. And if the company you're in right now isn't going to accommodate you, go find one that will. At the last industry association meeting I was at, literally half of the companies represented by the printers in the room, all privately held printers, were owned by women. Owned by women. Making the decisions every single day. Some of them had their husbands working in the business too, but they were running the business. It was their business. And they made sure that everyone knew that they were the owners and they were making the decisions. That doesn't mean you get a pass when you're working in a woman-owned company. Sometimes it's harder in a woman-owned company. Sometimes the demands and the expectations are higher, but I think you can get ahead of them. So it's my story. I believe that you can do anything you want to do. And I'm here to tell you, learn the words, learn the tools, and you can be a fierce woman in this business. You're on mute, sweetheart.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay. I appreciate everything you said. I want to ask you, what is your thought on the fact that it takes women 5 years longer from entry level to manager? You cannot assume that every guy knows the language and has done the work that you're suggesting. So how do we deal with, since that is the first step that sort of pushes the dominoes from that point for some women? Can you address that and your advice for that, moving up that first step so you don't have a broken rung?
So I'm not a believer in the broken rung, and I'm not a believer in a lot of the McKinsey numbers that you were sharing. And I'll be very clear about that. I am, because I've done market research, I am beyond the valley of suspicious when I see numbers like that. I don't know how many people they surveyed. I don't know how many companies they surveyed. I don't know what the cohorts of those companies were, whether they were manufacturing companies, service companies. I don't know what they were. I don't know where the numbers came from. So unless I can actually go look at the data to understand who and what they surveyed, I have a suspicion that it may take women longer. I think some of that that time it can be accounted for by women who do step away for some period of time if they're building families at the same time they're building their careers. And I'm not going to ask them not to do that. I'm just going to recognize that if I take a year out of my life because I've just brought a new life home and I step away from business for a little bit, it's going to take me an extra year to get wherever I'm going. In the women that I know that are in leadership roles or have been in leadership roles, I don't hear that story about it taking them longer to reach their step. I was talking to a woman who came into a company as an engineer and is now the business unit owner worldwide. And I asked her specifically if she had had hiccups along the way, because I had not experienced them. And she said that she didn't, because she was in a company that looked at her resume and looked at her capabilities and watched her every step along and opened the door to opportunities to her every step of the way. Conversely, I have had conversations with women who felt that they were held back and it did take them a little bit longer. And all I can tell you is, if you think you're being held back, if you're looking at people around you and the men or people that don't look like you are being pushed forward at a rate differently than yours, you go confront your HR department and you confront your management and say, excuse me, I'm trying to understand why I'm not getting the same level of accommodation that all these other people are. If you don't fight for yourself, nobody's going to fight for you. And that is the most important lesson to take away from whether McKinsey is right or not, or whether there really is a broken rung or not. Ultimately doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is you got to fight for yourself to get what you believe you are entitled to shoot for.
Thank you so much, Pat. I know we're gonna turn it over to Kelly now. Really appreciate your insight. I mean, we have a couple of differing opinions on all of that, but that's what makes Girls Who Print a comprehensive organization. We don't subscribe to this is the research and that's the way it is. And at the end of the day, Pat and I and Kelly always say the same thing. Nobody's coming to rescue you. So if you face this, it is up to you to do something about it, whether it is asking HR or your manager or the owner of the company, how do I get to the next step? What are the 5 things you need from me in order to make this happen? Because everybody else is passing me and I, or even it doesn't even have to be related to anybody else. But there is a responsibility. And if, it's still not happening for you, unfortunately, sometimes changing jobs is the best thing to do. And I would certainly suggest reaching out to other women in the company. If you're on LinkedIn, find them and just, say, look, let's have a conversation. How are things over there? And of course, search the Girls Who Print group first and see if there's any team members in there. So Kelly, go ahead. I'm going to flip the slides for Kelly, everybody.
Thank you very much. And I'm just thrilled to be here. Pat, I loved everything that you said. It's super inspirational and it gives me such a great kind of jumping off point for what I'm going to talk about today, which is the network. But doing my own research about this, I came across something about representation that is extremely important. And I didn't even tell Deborah about this before. I was going to tell you a little bit ago, but I want to know if everyone here knows what the Scully effect is. Pat's nodding her head, right? This is really important because in the 90s, there was a TV show called The X-Files. And in The X-Files was Agent Scully, who was smart and she was sarcastic and she had a lot of really strong skills. There was a massive bump in STEM pursuit of education, pursuit of vocation, jobs, everything. And it has been attributed to Dana Scully. So what Pat is telling you about bumping heads on ceilings and everything you heard Deborah say earlier, representation matters, right? So we all probably read Sheryl Sandberg's book, Lean In. I know, Deborah, some of your statistics came from that. Now, it is important that you see Pat as somebody who can inspire you and who has accomplished all of the things. She may have been the first one. Pat, you may not have known you were the first one, right? But this is incredibly important that we see women leaders and we know we can do that too, right? So when we think about, and Deb, you can advance the slide. So there's some things I'm going to talk about. And one of the things I really want to talk about when we think about a collective advocacy is this is the work that we're doing right now in this moment, is there are groups advocating for women, not just for themselves, but for us as a group. It's all the work that we're doing with mentorship. But I want to make a very clear distinction between what is mentorship and what is sponsorship. Okay, so this is an important distinction. Mentorship is what Deborah does when I assign her a new mentee, or what I do every time I take a new mentor. It is guidance, it is support, it is personal, it is anecdotal. It can be showing a way or strategizing or things like that, right? But these tend to be more informal relationships. They could be growth focused, but it is very much that one-on-one relationship. So I just had a mentorship call right before this call, and it's really checking in on somebody to what have you learned and what are you working on? And I had a situation exactly like this. You're not alone. You're not alone is a wildly valuable feeling to take into your body and into your spirit when you're in any of these kinds of situations. And that's what mentorship does. But let's talk about sponsorship, because sponsorship is using your influence to advocate for and elevate another. So sponsorship is something that more often will happen within your organization. So that's some of the things that Deborah was talking about, right? We don't get through a door and slam it behind us and then declare the problem solved, right? When we break that ceiling or we open that door, we get into the C-suite, we reach behind us and bring more people through. This is the way. Everybody in, everybody get in, right? That's what's really, really exciting about all of this. So we all have a role to play in this to support one another. But what Pat said and what Deborah said is true. No one's coming. If you don't watch the show Working Moms, it's a great, but there is a scene where she goes, no one's coming, right? Because what Pat wants you to be is big and strong, right? Like know that you have those capabilities. No one's going, you should do this. You should try this. It's the I will, right? It's that will that is involved in that. But so again, I think the takeaway from this discussion about building a strong network is to remember that representation matters. We're always going to talk about Emily Simon winning the Rising Star Award. We're always going to talk about the fact that Sandy Hubbard and Deborah and I and Pat were all Girly Award winners for a lifetime of achievement, contributing to women and girls in and going into the printing industry. So we all have a role to play in being mentors. That's why I tap college students to mentor high school students. There's no rule about when it's appropriate for you to do these things. If you heard nothing from Pat, when to do it? Now. When to do it? Tomorrow and the next day and the next day. But it doesn't just happen. It's not a magic wand. It's hard work. And it's all of the learning and the advocacy and the self-development and listening to the podcasts and becoming empowered, right? So those are all really, really important things to think about. But on the next slide, what we're going to talk about, because my notes are a little dicey here. So Deborah, if you could advance it, thank you. So when we think about skill building, what can you do in terms of getting skills, right? I can tell you from my personal experience, I had to go to my boss and say, I need a coach and I want it to be this person. And you know what he said to me? He said, well, you can pay for it. And I was like, absolutely not. I am not paying for this. Like, you're going to pay for it because the skills that I develop and what I learn in this is going to affect your profitability. It's going to make me a better salesperson, which is going to mean that I can get bigger deals and more sales and more profit for you. So you're going to pay for it. If it doesn't work and I don't increase my sales, you can ding me. You can ding my paycheck. But he never did because I did get better. But what would have happened to me if I hadn't been sturdy about that? Was I going to pay for that training? I mean, that just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense that a person would have to do that. Now, if it's something different, like learning to code or something like that isn't in my direct job description, I could understand going out and taking a class or something like that. But there's a different lens that I want to talk about with this too, which is you can be the one to do the training, right? If you are a great salesperson and you see that there are other salespeople on your team that are struggling, you can go to the owner and say, I think we need some additional support. And I will be happy to be the one to facilitate it. This is what I need. I need a space. I need time, right? And I might need a whiteboard or something like that, right? But we can be the ones to work on these skills. If there is something that is missing from your skill set, yes, there are plenty of free resources. There are lots of great content creators out there, but again, it's kind of a delicate balance of what is good for you and what is good for your company, and understanding that those kinds of things, the burden needs to be shared, and certainly whoever's going to benefit. So meaning the owner of your company can be and should be thinking about investing in this. And this is where I will say one of my favorite phrases, which is the squeaky wheel gets the grease. If you get a no the first time, you go back again, right? I remember when I was advocating, I wanted I wanted a Heidelberg QMDI so bad when I was working in digital printing. Every day I would go in, I lost another job because we don't have the DI. Right? I mean, we had to freaking reinforce the walls and reinforce the floor with concrete to get this thing. And it probably took me a year, but I was like a dog on a bone. I was not gonna not advocate for myself, because sometimes I hope the through line that you're seeing here is sometimes the advocacy is for yourself and the company. So that dialogue about what's good for the company, I need X because it will be good for the company, right? Those are really, really important things. Deborah talks about this a lot. We talk about this a lot. We all have a role to play in thought leadership in the printing and graphic arts communities, all the way from students to people who are getting ready to retire. And Deborah's got a great idea about turning retirees into interns. We'll probably talk about that in another session. But I just had a call yesterday with a young woman who just got named Employee of the Year at her company. And I just reached out to her because I'm like, I need to know everything. Guess when she started working in a print shop? Well, she's not working, 5 years old. 5 years old, going to work with her father, right? So when we think about thought leadership, you don't have to be a Deborah Korn or a Pat McGrew or a Kelly Mallozzi to be a thought leader. This young person knows so much. She is now leading the technical department, all while getting a degree in cognitive psychology, by the way. New hero, right? This young person, I mean, again, it gives me hope. And I just told her, I just want 10,000 of you. But we all can share our knowledge through social media, through blogging, through creating videos. This is influence, and influence is power, right? And so when again, I think if there is nothing you take away from what Pat said, it is to be sturdy. It is to be like a tree. You're not uprooting me. I am not going anywhere, right? And so the words that you use when you share on social media, talking about the problems that you solve, talking about your roles, talking about your career trajectory. Again, back to the idea of representation, there are young people watching us right now, and they are watching us ascend, and they say, I want that. And it's a responsibility. It's a big responsibility. But again, when we have the ability to teach people and engage with people and sometimes entertain them through our social media behavior and the things that we do on social media and do on our blogs and things, it's also really important to have fun. On the platform, we're going to start something called Fun Fridays in the forums. And there's going to be all kinds of fun things happening because, first of all, we are a really fun industry and there are a lot of really interesting things happening, but we need to have a little bit of fun too, right? So other ways that this knowledge sharing can exist, and believe me, these are things that are on the agenda for Girls Who Print going forward. Peer groups, right? Imagine a time of bringing a bunch of female leaders together from all over the globe to share best practices, support one another, talk about strategic things, talk about tactical, practical ways that we get where we want to be. But to Pat's point, we have to know where we want to be. Do you want to be a CEO? What does that take? Do most CEOs have MBAs? Better get that started. One of our conversations with Deborah earlier this year, I said that I wanted to deliver a TED Talk. So I printed out a big thing of TED and it's sitting right above my desk. Well, 2 days ago, I put in my application for TED, right? Because this group is about action. We are not talking about things. We are doing things. I am fired up, people. I am fired up about this. We have to do, right? We do it. Pat's telling you, don't think about it. Don't let any statistics hold you back. Do it. Go there, be there, know it, say it, all those things, right? And so the logical next step of this is resilience, right? Resilience comes from community. So you're in the right place. And if you're not here with us live today and you're watching this later, you are in the right place to be supported by a bunch of resilient people who know how to get things done. Because together is better. And Deborah's Gen X, I'm Gen X. Pat, you're probably right on the cusp. We always thought we had to do everything all by ourselves, right? We were the feral, independent little monsters letting ourselves into the house at 8 years old, but we don't have to do this alone, right? We are here for you. You are here for me. I know that I could call any one of you on this call and say, I need you for something. We've done it with Warren recently. Warren, we need you. And he has been like, I'm there, right? So we know that we build strong networks because the more people that are in our network, those are raving fans, those are supporters, those are people that will answer the call and say, yes, I will help you with that. Of course, I can introduce you to that person. Of course, I can write you a recommendation. Of course, I can get you a job interview at X, Y, or Z place. For sure. When we think about our legacy, right? When we think about getting into that last quarter of our careers and we think about what we leave behind, every single person you have helped in your career is your legacy. I am Deborah's legacy, right? I met Deborah back in like 2008, 2009, and she said, I think I need you in the printerverse. Who would have possibly known that this many years later? So there are tens of thousands of people that are Deborah's legacy, and I am one of them. So again, I certainly hope that I fired you up. I do want to say one little quick thing. There is a phrase, leave it better than you found it. There's a song, and that song is a great song, leave it better than you found it. But you know who said it? Robert Baden-Powell, who is the founder of Scouting. And the through line here is that my daughter camps at Baden-Powell at Yagoo in Rhode Island every summer. I didn't know that until today, that Robert Baden-Powell, her campsite is Baden-Powell. Scouting is now open to women. We in my town alone have 3 female Eagle Scouts. Okay. And so that sensibility about leaving it better than you found it is what we're all here for, is to make women stronger, make them better, make each other better, make ourselves better, and make the industry better. So I guess I'll leave it on that note. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Always inspiring. And to wrap up everything that was said is we break the glass ceiling together. And some of the upcoming ways that we're going to do this together is March is Women's Print History Month. It's our biggest visibility campaign of the year. It's very simple. You answer a couple of questions. This year, we are following the United Nations theme of for all women and girls in order to, what is it? For all women and girls. And so the questions are about empowerment and, creating a better future for everybody. It's very simple to do, and you get tons of exposure. There was, I don't know, something like 20 million impressions last year for the Print History Month hashtag. So it's definitely something you want to participate in and share. It's a way to say, hi, I'm here for anybody who wants to know, and here's how I kick ass every single day. During Women's Print History Month, we also celebrate International Women's Day, as I just mentioned, and we follow the United Nations theme, so it's for all women and girls, and we are going to have a robust conference. Registration is open. This is a free event. It's live on Zoom, so you can just go to Girls Who Print, the regular website, girlswhoprint.net, and sign up there for Zoom. As I mentioned before, Girls Who Print is now a nonprofit organization. We have a new member platform and program with a robust membership and sponsorship program. If you are part of a company or you own a company and you want to, be seen as being someone who is part of the progress of the printing industry, a company that is open to equal opportunities for everybody, who's working on, making sure that, everybody has a right to succeed and to be seen and heard, then you definitely want your company's logo on the Girls Who Print website, because that is what it says to everybody. And by the way, great way to get college students to want to apply and work at your print shop over somebody who's maybe not as active in the making things better for everybody side of the world at this point. And, we rise together for sure. Our new membership program and platform is at members.girlswhoprint.net. And we just want to thank you so much. As Pat said, every moment and minute that you spend with us, you're not doing something else. So we want to make this exchange of time as valuable as possible and hope that we have achieved that for everybody today. So what we're going to do now is what we do after all of these sessions. We're going to turn off the video and thank everybody for watching, and anybody who wants to can stay for an open discussion. So again, thank you so much. Thank you, Pat, for joining us. Thank you, Kelly. And for everybody out there, empower long and prosper.